In this video, we're going to talk about concatenation. And we want to go back to explore this idea of immutability, the idea that a string can't be changed. And you might say, Mr. Geiger, you just showed us this example a little bit ago where I had string 2 that said welcome. And then right here, I took string 2 and I concatenated some words and some spaces onto the end of it, and then reassigned it back to that very same variable, which means I took string 2 and I changed it, but you said we can't change strings. Okay, so let's think about what happens behind the scenes. Here's an example of string S1 equals Susan, string S2 equals Robert. So we have these two strings, they're two objects in memory. And we're going to take string 1, which is their first name, and concatenate string 2 onto the end of it. That's the idea. Right? So the idea is string 1 is going to be equal to string 1 plus string 2, and it gets stored back in string 1. But that's not actually what happens. This is what happens. It concatenates. So right here, when we did S1 equals S1 plus S2, it took Susan, took that string, concatenated Roberts on the end of it, but when we said we were going to store it back in S1, it didn't actually store it in the same object. What it did is create a new object, okay, and take that S1 variable and point to the new object, and this old object was deleted. It was gone. It goes out in memory. It's actually picked up by something called the garbage collector, or it might actually be destroyed on purpose. We'll talk about more theory about that later on. But it didn't modify the string object that previously existed. It created a new object and got rid of the old object and just reassigned the variable to point to the new object. Okay. So that's how concatenation actually works. We are not modifying the original string. Even though it looks like we are in the code, behind the scenes, Java is creating a brand new object, storing the results in there, and reassigning the variable once it hits the assignment operator. So this creates the new string object and assigns it to the original variable that we had. This is a bad slide because that should be a lowercase s1 right there. So let's look a little bit more about concatenation. We've talked about it a lot already. Here we use concatenation. We use the plus concatenation operator to concatenate welcome onto the string space to programming. And when we print that out, it prints welcome to programming. And you can actually get rid of string 1 right now. We're working with string 2. So we did concatenation that way. We can add in numbers in here if we want. Java's real nice that it lets us, as long as there's a string involved, I can do something like this. Okay, and concatenate a number right on the end. It will automatically convert the number to a string and display it for us. So there's welcome to programming :67. So we can mix numbers in with our strings, and Java will automatically take care of that and concatenate our strings and our numbers together. As long as there is at least one string involved, we can do that. If there's not two strings involved, if it was two numbers, it would do addition. But Java detects that there's a string involved. Here's a string, here's another string, and then all of a sudden we use the plus operator, and it says, is this an arithmetic operator or is this a concatenation operator? And since there were strings involved, it assumes, hey, it's concatenation, and it lets us concatenate the number on the end, and it works just fine. But I want to show you a different way to do concatenation. We use this one a lot. However, there are other ways. So let's do string 2. String 2 equals string 2 dot, and there's a concat method that we can use. let's concatenate on there, space to programming. Oop, that needs to be a 2. Okay. So the concat method will also let us concatenate 2 strings together. And I spelled programming wrong. 2 R's and not 2 M's. Okay. So there's also concat method. So we can concatenate using the plus sign. We can concatenate using the concat method. The concat method actually a lot of times is a little bit more restrictive. The plus sign works. Most people use it most of the time unless you have a specific reason. The benefits are, as we saw, when we use the plus operator, we can use a string, we can use characters, we can use ints, we can use doubles or floats, and concatenate them all together. It converts all the numbers automatically to a string as it's concatenating them. The concat method only works on strings. We cannot concat just a number onto the string. It's going to fail. Boop. Has to be a string. We could use this and it would work, but that's not a number in this case. It's a string of characters, the characters 5 and 6. So concat is a little bit more restrictive, which is why most people probably use the plus sign most of the time for concatenation. If these don't match, in the example I just showed you, it's not a string and a string. We have problems. Things can fail. So the concat method is there. People use the plus sign most of the time. If you're absolutely positive it's going to be 2 strings being joined together, the concat method works great.